There we go. All right, so who are we? We are Athens Oconee Casa, of course you know that. We are part of a larger organization called Children First. That is our umbrella organization. Our executive director is Susie Weller. So she is over all of Children First and all the programs. I am Emily Dant. I am the CASA program director. We also have Tasha Nicholson and Courtney Thurston. They are advocacy coordinators. Their main role with our program is to support and help guide Casa Volunteers through their casework. And then we have Arden. She's recently transitioning out of the advocacy coordinator role into our community outreach coordinator role. And so she is still supervising cases and supporting volunteers, but she is also our main recruiter and like marketing person now. And so again, we're an umbrella organization through Children First. We are the largest program. We originally started as a CASA program, and then I believe it was somewhere in the 90s they decided that they wanted to provide more services to our community. So the Safe Care home visiting program started. Safe Care is an in-home parenting education where they go into the home and they teach lessons on home safety. They do like a health module, you know, when to take your child to the doctor, what, you know, how to take a temperature. And then they do some parent-child interaction direction. And so Safe Care works with families who have defects involved in their lives some way. Maybe the children are still in the homes, or the children could be removed from the homes. They are able to work with both families. And then Spark, I'm going to say it this time, Arden, I'm going to give it a shot at supportive parenting. No, I messed it up. What is it?
Supportive Parenting Access Resource Center.
There it is. It doesn't matter how long I'm here, I can't get that. So what Spark does is Spark helps fathers become legitimated and helps them gain some like visitation rights. They help bridge the gap. If, you know, a dad he's wanting to become legitimated, he wants to have some visitation with his child, Spark can kind of help bridge the gap with the parents and hopefully get that set up for them. Athens Oconee Casa, we're going to tell you a lot about what a CASA does, but basically we work with children in foster care. We are advocates for children in foster care. And so our goals for 2021, we were coming a long ways to reach these goals. We had made a lot of progress. Our main thing was transitioning back into the office. We had started doing that. As you can tell, Arden and I are working from home. We have now had to pull back a little bit on that transition back into the office goal due to the situation with the pandemic right now and numbers rising. So I don't know that we'll be back in the office full time anytime soon, but hopefully maybe by the end of the year, maybe early next year, we have hopes. We'd hope to serve 80% of children, 80% of the cases that we have in Clarke and Oconee counties would have a CASA, and we're hoping to help bridge that gap with this training. Hire an additional team member. So we hired one already this year, and we're actively recruiting for an additional team member right now, and then develop an expansion plan for the office. And so every program within our organization is growing. The need for our services is very high in Clarke and Oconee County. So while we're hoping to hire one more staff member now, we are hoping to hire an additional one possibly in 2022. I know that Spark is actively trying to hire a part-time person right now to help them. We have hopes that Safe Care will find funding so they would be able to hire additional staff members. And then with that, we might be outgrowing our office. And so then that's another thing that we've got to work on is where will we live as an organization? The current state of foster care in our community. Go ahead, Arden.
Yeah, so we will talk a little bit more about what foster care is exactly, because I know when I came into this, I didn't have a full understanding of what it was. But for our community, I will say we have not been unscathed by the pandemic. It has been a particularly difficult time for child welfare in our area. And so what that looks like is In particular, the Department of Family and Children's Services, who we work alongside with, we work very closely with them. They are the ones who are, bringing kids into foster care and monitoring their progress through foster care. They have had a lot of difficulty and turnover. Child welfare is already a field that is plagued by a lot of turnover, but now more than ever, it's just been really, really hard to keep solid case managers in, and it's a really hard job to do. This is a hard job to do. Casa is a hard job to do, but it really does take a special type of person, and we recognize that. So if you know anyone who is looking to work in child welfare, please encourage them to apply for a job at DFACS. We would love to get some more case managers in here. We really, really need them. So for us, the biggest volunteer opportunity that we have is Casa. What that looks like right now, our current picture of Casa, it is also not ideal. I would say, though, that we are in a prime spot to grow and support the growth that we have. Before, we have grown very, very quickly and then not had the infrastructure to support that growth. Emily, as program director, and then our executive director, Susie Weller, have been working very, very hard to make sure that when we are bringing volunteers in, we have the staff and time to support them. What that looks like right now, our current picture of our volunteers and our kids in care, we have 60 active volunteers. I will say prior to the pandemic, we were hoping to hit 100 volunteers. And so 60 volunteers and 100 volunteers is very, very different. But I think that's why this training right now is very important, not to reach 100, but to serve more kids. We have 140 children waiting for a Casa volunteer. That's 140 children in our area without a voice. And we have 121 kids who are being served by a Casa volunteer. So we are close to being back up to that 50%. We were holding pretty steady at 60%. We've had a lot of natural roll off recently, which happens, but because of the pandemic, again, we have not been able to have as many trainings as we would like to. What other volunteer opportunities do we have? So Casa, we understand, is not for everyone. It's a lot. It's a big ask. It's hard work. We are always open to talking about one-time volunteer opportunities. We've been more accommodating of it in the past when we've been in person, but I think maybe we have more staff now. We recently hired an office admin to where we could coordinate that kind of thing if it was something people were interested in offering. We also have internships. I believe we're pretty full on internships right now, but always look in the spring, the summer. We absolutely have to have interns. And then we do have a board. So we're a nonprofit, so we are governed by a board. I believe Susie is actively recruiting for the board, or is getting close to being done with recruiting for the board, at least for a period of time. But I doubt that she would turn down someone who reached out and was interested. Emily, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, or we can play the video. We didn't play the video this morning, but y'all get to see the video. So we doubly remembered this time.
I gotta find the right thing. Oh, I'm so sorry.
So Emily's going to play this short little video from Texas Casa. Just close your ears when they say Texas, plug in Georgia, plug in Athens, Oconee Casa. If you're not able to hear it, let us know. Just gesture or put it in the chat box.
Every child is born with a chance to dream, to learn, to play, and a chance to feel safe. But what happens when those chances disappear? For children placed in foster care, the chaos of being removed from home and placed in a new environment with new people, court dates, social worker visits, and new schools can be traumatic and hinder a child's desire to learn, play, and even dream. How can we give these kids the help they need? How can we give them all the chances they deserve? For that, we need Casa Volunteers. What is a Casa? A Casa is a court-appointed special advocate. They help kids in foster care know there's someone by their side, committed to looking out for them. A Casa is not a superhero or a legal expert. Casas come from different backgrounds, neighborhoods, and communities, just like the kids they help. To be a Casa, you don't need any professional training in social work or the legal system. All you need is the will to help. If you decide to become a Casa volunteer, you'll be trained to work with children in foster care, navigate the legal system, and speak in court. Once you've gone through training, you're appointed by a judge to help with a child's case. As a CASA, your job is to get to know the child as well as the parents and family, foster family, and everyone else involved. Judges count on Casa Volunteers to keep them updated so they can make the best possible decisions for the child's physical and emotional well-being. Casa Volunteers are one constant figure for the child, but they're not the only ones. CASAs never work alone. When you become a CASA, you'll work with a CASA staff member who will advise and support you through the entire process. You'll work with caseworkers, attorneys, and others to engage committed adults who will support the child and family. These adults can include members of a child's family of origin, foster family, teachers, faith communities, coaches, and friends. Together, they create a strong support network for the child and family. This support system helps develop a plan and set goals for the child and family going forward. Ideally, the plan will involve reunification with the child's parent or parents when safe and possible. When that's not the case, you may recommend that the child live with another relative or close family friend. Other possibilities may include searching for a loving adoptive home or preparing the child for adult living on their own. Regardless of the outcome, you'll keep in contact with the support network you've helped create until the case closes, so that everyone continues to put the best interests of the child first. If this support group stays committed, the child will have strong, stable adults who they can rely on for years to come. This leads to a greater sense of safety, happiness, and stability, better performance in school, and stronger peer relationships. There are thousands of children in foster care throughout Texas. By becoming a Casa Volunteer, you can make sure they are safe and supported. Because every child has a chance. It's you. Find out more about how you can help by visiting.
Okay, so don't visit Texas Casa. You can visit Athens Oconee Casa.
Don't give them any of your business. Stay here with us. So I think that video is really great. It's a short little introduction into foster care, CASA, what that looks like, what the outcomes look like. And so I'm going to kind of expand on some of that, and just talk a little bit more specifically about the CASA role. And so CASA, as you may have heard in that video, stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. CASAs are people like you. They can be anyone. You don't have to have any sort of formal training to go into this. You just have to go through our training. We tell people that anyone can be a Casa volunteer. We really value having a wide variety of people because we have a wide variety of children in foster care. There's no one type of child who comes into foster care, and there's no one type of volunteer. We'll talk more about what our hardline requirements are in terms of age and then background check and things like that. But really, any type of person can be a Casa volunteer. So what is foster care? And I bring that up because as I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and when I came into this world, the child welfare world, I had a very, I did not know what foster care was. I had an inaccurate view. I thought that foster care was adoption, that meant kids were placed with families and adopted, and it was this happy story. And I mean, that is a component, that is something that happens, but foster care is so much more, and that's not the definition of foster care. Foster care is a temporary solution. We don't want kids to stay in foster care. We don't want kids to be removed from their parents at all if we can help it. It is a last resort decision. It is when the child is no longer safe in the home for whatever reason, and they have to be removed. And so what that looks like is it could be issues like substance abuse, neglect, domestic violence, untreated mental health, whatever presenting problem is in that home has qualified it to rise to the attention for Department of Family and Children's Services to say, okay, this child can't be with their parents anymore for this, this, and this. And so when that child comes into care, hopefully they can be placed in their community with someone they know, potentially a relative or a family friend. And then if that is not available, if that's not readily available, they would be placed with a foster home. Still hopefully in the area, but a lot of times not. We don't have, just like we don't have enough case managers or CASAs, we don't have enough foster homes in our area for every child that comes in foster care to stay in their area, to stay in their same school, which is unfortunate, but it's a reality of foster care. So when a child comes into care, they potentially are moving to a new community. They're living with a stranger. They could be in a new school. and they're navigating all these different systems. Their progress is being monitored by a case manager with DFACs. And while the case manager is making sure that kid is set up in school, do they need therapy because they've gone through this really, really hard thing? Do they have any medications that they need? When was the last time they went to the dentist? They are also simultaneously coordinating and communicating with the birth parents to get them started on working to get the child home, working to get their child back home. So that could be getting drug screenings, going to therapy as well, getting medication management if that's needed, maybe taking domestic violence awareness classes. Case manager is in charge of making sure those things are happening, referring out those services, monitoring the progress, not just for that family, because families can be one child, they can be multiple siblings. Kids often come into care as sibling groups. They're not just doing that for one family, they're doing that for 20 to 30 families, which is a ton. I think about, all that goes into me just living my life and, making sure my cat is okay. I don't even have kids, and that sometimes feels like too much. And so to have to do that for 20 to 30 families who are probably experiencing some of the worst moments in their life is an incredibly hard job. What Casa does is they come in and they have one case. They come in and they fill in the cracks and they come up along DFACs and hopefully partner with them and work alongside them. They're able to take the time that case manager isn't able to. They can sit there and talk on the phone with the foster parent for maybe 30, 45 minutes, whereas the case manager, unfortunately, can't get to their phone because they have another case issue going on. So with that, CASAs do things like visit their child. And you're going to hear us say that multiple times throughout this presentation. You have to visit your child at least once a month. It is paramount to your ability to advocate for that child. I would think it would be very difficult to advocate for a child who you've never met or don't know. We want you to build that relationship. That's something that we hope for. And I know a lot of people come to this volunteer opportunity because they're hoping they can build a relationship with a child. So again, seeing your child at least once a month, more if you wanted to, that's definitely an option. Speaking to all of these people who are now involved in this child's life, whether it be doctors, therapists, teachers, and finding out how this child is doing in all of those areas and providing information or input if it's needed. If you have the school records from the last school and this child's at a new school, that's something you could provide. Or talking to the therapist about a particularly hard thing that's happened for a child. And also gaining all of that information, making sure you're keeping track of that and making sure that DFACS is aware of that information as well. And then like the case manager, you are also monitoring the biological parent's progress on their case plan. You're going to want to know if they're screening and testing negative. You're going to want to know if they're making their therapy appointments. And you're going to be talking to them. You're also going to be developing a relationship with these birth parents, hopefully, because you're advocating for them, you're advocating for their child, you're developing this relationship with them. And the hope is that this child will be able to go home if that's in their best interest. In order to determine if it's in that child's best interest, you need to be communicating with the birth parents as well. Cases that have CASAs reach permanency faster. I would say we are the squeaky wheel. We are the thing that says, hey, what about this? What about this? And some cases don't have that, unfortunately. And so I think that definitely contributes to cases being closed faster. CASAs being able to come in and say, hey, let's do this, or hey, I found this creative solution, or I'm able to help in this way. CASAs are sometimes one of the only stable adults in a child's life. This is a field of a lot of turnover. Kids, unfortunately, at times don't just stay in one placement. They get moved from placement to placement for whatever reason. And new people are constantly coming into their life during a time where there's so much uncertainty. CASA is set up so that we will be consistent. You will be the person who continues to show up. That's why we ask for a year of the life of the case commitment. We want you to be the one who keeps showing up. Emily, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So I know that a lot of, because I know you guys are both law school students, that a lot of law school students come to us because they want that courtroom experience and to be able to see that side of things. And I would definitely say that is a huge component of being a Casa volunteer. With that, all that information I talked about, all of those people you're talking to, information you're gathering, you are compiling that into a Casa report. CASA reports are submitted every time we go to court to review a juvenile court case. That happens about once every 3 to 4 months. In those hearings, you're going to be getting updates from the parents, the case managers. You're going to be potentially hearing from other providers. But you'll find oftentimes that not everyone on that case is able to be at court for whatever reason. And so I think that's pretty important for the CASA report to be able to provide some of that information that people are not able to be there to testify to for whatever reason. Or maybe you spoke to someone that case manager wasn't able to speak to, or you had a conversation and know this relative or have been able to learn this thing about this child that no one else has been able to find out because they didn't have the time. And that would be in your CASA report. We have done a lot of work lately to make sure that our CASA reports are becoming part of the file. They are submitted into evidence. They become a part of that case record, which is huge. It's a little bit of a recent development for us, and it's something that we've worked really hard to get there. With that, with our CASA reports, you're doing all this information, you're putting all this information in there, and you're also making recommendations. Recommendations for things that you think should happen to this child in this case, in this family. That can be a lot of different things. You could be recommending that a child go to the dentist or the doctor, or you could be recommending that this child go home to their parents. That's the hope, that we're going to be able to recommend that at some point in time. That's a wide variety of things. That's a huge difference between saying, hey, let's go to the eye doctor versus, hey, this child needs to go home. None of those decisions are made wholly on your own, based on your own judgment. You have staff support. You will be either assigned an advocacy coordinator or a peer coordinator, which is an experienced volunteer who is able to oversee CASAs. Those people will be looking over your report, going back and forth with you and helping you edit and get it ready to be submitted. They will also be at court with you and readily available to answer any questions you have during that hearing. You also will be talking to all of these providers, the therapists, the doctors, the foster parents, and getting their input on what recommendations need to be made. None of this is made in a vacuum. This is not solitary work. There are things that you do alone, writing your CASA report, reaching out to people, going on visits. There's not someone necessarily coming alongside you with those, but you do always have support in the form of staff or other CASA volunteers. Emily, if you'll go to the next slide. So what does it look like to be a CASA? CASAs have to go through our training, but once they do, once you get through training, you are sworn in as an officer of the court. Upon being sworn in, we very quickly want you to get your case picked out and start working and just hit the ground running. We give you so much information in such a short period of time. We think that it's really important to go ahead and apply it as quickly as possible so you don't lose it all. CASAs do get a say in what case they are picking or what case they are working. We want to consider your preferences. We want to set you up for success to the best that we can. We can't promise you a certain type of case, a certain type of subject matter, a certain age, but we do take those things into account and want to give you something that you're interested in and that you feel a connection with. A lot of volunteers, when they are looking at cases, they tell us that they pick the case that is called to them, and that looks different for everyone. Once CASAs take a case, again, you are going to see your child at least once a month. Can you tell this is important? It's very important. Please see your child at least once a month, if not more. What does it look like? What time commitment are we asking for? I will say training and CASA volunteer work are very different. The training process is a lot more rigorous and intensive with the time and the work that we're expecting you to do. But once you're through, then it's very different. CASA work is a lot more on your own time at that point. It's about 10 to 20 hours a month. 20 is definitely on the higher side. I would say that that's probably when you're first starting to work your case, or maybe you're writing your report. Those will be heavier time. Those will be heavier hour months for you. 10 is probably a lot more accurate. And in that, again, you're calling, you're visiting, you're communicating with people, and it's on your own time for the most part. So if evenings work for you, or maybe during your lunch break, you send some emails, you send some texts, you make some calls. That's a lot of CASA work right there. There are some things that we're not able to control when they happen. Those court hearings are one, but again, they only happen every 3 to 4 months. We are able to get you pretty advanced notice of those. They've gotten into a good habit of scheduling court hearings right after the last one happens. So you can walk away hopefully from a court hearing knowing your date. And then there's also different meetings, DFACS meetings, and we do get less notice with that, but they're generally 30 minutes and a conference call that you can join from anywhere.
All right, so successful CASAs. And so we get this question a lot during interviews is, what does it take to really be a successful CASA? Like what traits do these people have? And I think first and foremost are, just what we have on here, seeking cooperative solutions. I think of CASA as a facilitator of communication. And what that means is that CASA has all the information. You have an appointment letter that allows you access to all the information. There is nobody else on a case that has the ability to access information the way that CASA does, because we have a court order allowing us to do so. And so I think a lot of times what you find is that every provider, every party, every member of every person involved in a case has a different piece of information, and they're working their job for this family based off that information they have. What CASA can do is bring everybody to the table and say, what information do you have that these people need to know about? What information do you have that could hopefully change a service or help a mom be more successful or help this child in school? So I would say CASAs who are very collaborative and go into it collaborative, with the rest of the members of the case, usually find a lot of success. I would say that successful CASAs are one that are willing to accept supervision and training and evaluation from staff. All the staff has been doing this for a while. We've all been in child welfare for a while. And so, we always want you to walk into a meeting or walk into a situation as informed and as prepared as possible. And sometimes that might mean, I say to you, hey, you've gotten a lot of information from foster mom. Have you talked to the child's therapist, or have you actually talked to the biological mother to find out her view on this? Sometimes we have to pull CASAs back or redirect. And all of this is done so you can be successful, so you can make the greatest impact on this case and achieve what you came here for. So that can be hard. That criticism sometimes or redirection can be hard. As adults, we like to think that we have it all figured out. And so that's definitely something that's incredibly important. Appearing at all the court hearings to advocate for the child's best interest. Yes, you will have a Casa report that you submit, but your voice is always the loudest when you're there. And things around hearings happen very quickly. Suddenly people start participating in services that they maybe weren't before. And people start doing the things that they're supposed to right before a hearing. Decisions can be made in that hearing. And if you're not there to hear the new information being presented, you're not there to give your voice for the child's best interest. So attending all the hearings is really important. And providing a Casa report at all the hearings is incredibly important. Just giving an update to the judge, letting the judge know that any new information that might have come up in between hearings and making recommendations based off that. You must be a dedicated child advocate. And what this means is that you're dedicated to your case, you're dedicated to the well-being and best interest of that child. And that might mean that, there's information that you need to explore. There might be, maybe your mom is dealing with a substance abuse issue, or the child really needs some educational supports. You might have to independently on your own seek out resources and educate yourself in order to serve this family better. And so that's what it means to be dedicated, is to not just work the case, but find creative solutions. Go out there and figure out in the community what resources are available to help this child. Advocate for the child's best interest in the community by working with mental health individuals, educational individuals, the community as a whole, to meet all this child's needs. Children have needs on many levels, whether it be mental health, emotional, physical, social, and our children in foster care are no different. In fact, oftentimes the smallest things that other children have the opportunity to participate in are overlooked for the children in foster care, because people are really worried about, are they safe? Have they eaten? Things like that. They're not asking, did you get to join the art class that you were interested in? And so as a whole, we want to be that objective party who's looking at the child as a whole child, not just as their foster care case. General requirements. You have to complete all components of training on time. This includes writing assignments, Moodle work, and court observation. Arden talked about it a little bit earlier, but training is intense and it's a lot. And we've really tried to strengthen our language to communicate that it is a lot of work. We have gotten feedback that it's like a college hybrid course where it's a lot packed into a short amount of time. And so we are teaching you how to write a Casa report. So you will have writing assignments. We will end up writing a fake Casa report throughout all of training. We also use an online program called Moodle. And so Moodle has enabled us to be able to cut down on the amount of in-person time that we spend. But you do Moodle work during the week on your own time. There is a due date. You will have Moodle work due each week, but you're able to complete that, you know, either in the mornings or in the evenings, whatever's convenient for you. We also require court observation, and we provide the court observation information to you about when hearings will take place and how you can observe them. But it's really important that you do the court observation, because everything we talk about in training is hypothetical. We're talking about hypothetical situations or hypothetical people. And when you go to court and you actually see these individuals and you see the reality of, you know, what they're facing every day, and you hear their story and you see the children and you see the parents, it makes it real. And we have had people either really, once they do court observation, go all in and be like, I want to do this. Or we've had people back out and be like, I don't know that I can handle this. So it's just really, really important, that court observation. And it is a requirement to swear in. Arden said it earlier, seeing your child at least once a month. More often than if you like. If you want to go see their baseball game or you want to go to their school play, we definitely encourage you to do that. See them in the foster home, go have lunch with them if you're able to. And so we encourage as much time as you can spend with your child, as long as it's not a disruption into that child's life, because they will also have a lot of other things going on with therapists and whatever else. 12 hours of continuing education yearly. And so we call these in-service hours. And we make it really easy to get in-service hours. One, we try to provide in-service opportunities to our volunteers, whether it be watch this webinar, there's a training taking place, you can participate in this, or you can do things like if you sit in on a seminar that applied to your Casa case. If you tell us what you learned and how, you know, it helps you understand your case better, we'll give you in-service hours. If you read a book on trauma or watch a documentary on substance abuse and it taught you something that you're able to use in your Casa case, let us know and we'll give you in-service hours for that. You do need to complete a comprehensive background screening before swearing in. We want to make sure we're sending out the safest volunteers that we could possibly find in our community. So there is fingerprinting, child abuse registry, sex offender registry. All these screenings will take place. We ask that you have transportation, personal phone, personal computer with video chat, personal email, and Microsoft Word. And you'll notice in that there's a lot of personal, and the reason why that is because our work is extremely confidential. We do have a Casa appointment letter that allows us access to this family's entire world and history, but we take that really, really seriously. And so you can't, like, once you become a Casa volunteer, you can't talk to your mom or your sister or your best friend about your Casa case. You can't give specifics. You can talk about, you know, I just had a hard day in court, or I had a great meeting at DFACS, but the specifics of your case have to stay confidential. We do have a really great support network within our Casa organization. We have other volunteers that love meeting other volunteers. You have Casa staff. You're able to talk. As long as it's within Casa, you're able to talk about your case within Casa, just not outside of Casa. So that means you would need a private phone or a private email to be able to receive information on. We ask for a year-long or life of the case commitments. Some of our Casas have been on their cases. Usually about the average, I would say, is about 18 months. And that's just so, like Arden talked about earlier, you can be that stable person who constantly shows up for that child, whether it be at school or if they change foster home. We want to build that relationship and let that child know that I'm really here in this with you until we get your permanency figured out. You need to be 21 years old to swear in. And the last thing is to have the ability to respect individuals from various backgrounds, lifestyles in a variety of settings. And we throw this in here because a lot of people are like, yeah, I could do CASA work. And then suddenly you're involved in a world that's very different than the world that you may have grown up in. You're working with individuals who have a very different perspective because their life experiences have been extremely different than your own. And that can be hard. It can challenge some of your core beliefs. And that's when we really start seeing people's bias come out. And so everybody has bias, and we challenge that in training. And we're going to talk to you about what your personal bias is. You can't help it. Everybody has it. But do you have the ability to respect somebody else who views things differently than you do? Can you be objective and see that this person has a different belief and a different lifestyle? And that means it may be different than your own, but they can still be a safe parent. It's really, really important. Training expectations, just like I was talking about, be prepared to have your personal beliefs and biases challenged. Again, we're going to do this to kind of hopefully broaden your perspective a little bit. There's oftentimes volunteers don't even know that they have certain feelings about things. When we get into kind of hot button topic issues like substance abuse and mental health and child abuse, people start having a lot of feelings that they didn't realize existed. And so we want to work with you on that. And we want to figure out where that's coming from with you and help you explore that and make sure it's not going to be a barrier. Because again, our purpose is to be the objective party. And if your own personal beliefs are preventing you from advocating for the child's best interest, then that's going to be a conflict. And so training is difficult. You might feel some frustration, but we are trying to create a safe space for people to explore those biases and personal beliefs before you walk into a room with a lot of professionals who have been doing this for a long time. Because if you walk into a room and your personal beliefs are preventing you from seeing the best interest for this child, other professionals in the room might have issues with that. And so we would much rather you hear it from us and explore that with us before walking into a room of professionals who have just a lot of experience already. Be prepared to be.
It might not be as nice as we would be.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't think we're nice, so.
Well, I will say in this world that you're coming into, you're walking into a world, Arden touched on it earlier, where every single person that you're working with, whether it be parent attorney, child attorney, DFACS case manager, DFACS administration, a therapist, a substance abuse person, like every single provider and person that you're working with is likely overworked, underpaid, and their organization is understaffed because child welfare needs more people. It just does. To be able to handle the weight of what is going on in our communities, we need more people involved, and we just don't have it. So when you experience that, you do work with people who sometimes this is like their 16th meeting of the day, and their patience level is, their patience is gone. And so again, like Arden's saying, like we're gonna present things to you in a bit nicer way, and we're gonna challenge you in a nicer way than may happen in those meetings. So, but also in those meetings, you do always have a staff member with you, generally in court and at DFACS. So we're there to support you and kind of like help you out during that meeting and let you know if what you're saying is appropriate or not. During training, be prepared to be uncomfortable. We will push you. It's uncomfortable because you're going to be tired. It's uncomfortable because we're going to make you deal with subject matter that you're really rather not deal with. It's uncomfortable because we're going to ask you, why do you feel that way? Why do you believe that? Where is that statement coming from? During training, expect to receive feedback, constructive criticism. Arden and I do check-ins probably week 2 or 3 in training to talk to you about how you're feeling and what are you seeing and what are you thinking is next for you. And we're going to give you feedback on what we're seeing and your progress. So communicating with staff is imperative. the CASA staff, our job is to be super flexible. We work with volunteers from all walks of life and try to match them up with children from all walks of life. We've seen and heard a lot from either volunteers or from our children in foster care or from DFAC. So we usually can come up with a creative solution for things if people communicate with us. If people are telling us what's going on with them, we want to work with you. We want to make this volunteer experience work for you as long as it's healthy to do so. Adhering to homework deadlines speaks to your ability to do so in your casework. When you're working with your advocacy coordinator, they are not just your sole advocacy coordinator. They also have a number of volunteers and a number of cases that they're trying to work. So normally deadlines are incredibly important so we can make sure you get the attention that you deserve as a volunteer. And so we start that process in training. Once you're at CASA, the work is very confidential. We talked about that earlier. Relying on your CASA support network for those conversations when you're frustrating or you're excited, instead of taking it to your friends and family. And it's important to remember that this work isn't about you. It's about the child and children you're working with. And so part of the reason why we challenge personal beliefs and biases is because oftentimes people want to work with subject matter that they wish somebody had done for them. And so when you start connecting your own personal stuff with this child's personal stuff, you become a lot less objective. And so it's always really important. I know it's just one thing I do in a meeting. When I'm in a meeting and I start being affected by what I'm hearing, the details of the case that I'm hearing, and I start feeling those emotions, I do have to remind myself, hey, this isn't me. This is that kid. This isn't me. This is that family. And really pulling back, because I'll get angry and I'll feel emotional and I'll get frustrated because, you know, these kids have gone through a lot, and just remembering this is about me. I need to be objective. I need to be clear-headed so we can make good decisions for this family.
And I would add to that too, that this is not glamorous work. You are not going to come in here and save all the children. And if that's your intent, you're going to be disappointed. I hate to tell you that. That's a very noble goal, but what you are going to do is make an impact on a child's life, and you will not see that immediately. You may not see that for months at a time, but it's going to be small things. It's going to be little things that don't feel big to you in that moment. It's going to be testifying in court and feeling like no one listened to what you said. Or talking to the teacher for the 5th time and you're like, they just really don't get what this kid needs. But it's, again, you're continuing to show up. You are dedicated. You are here until this child finds their permanent home or returns home to their parents. And that the impact of that is just a lot far reaching than maybe you will ever be able to see. I think the Casa Volunteers are part of a lot of seeds being planted, and they don't necessarily get to see all of those seeds come to bear fruit.
Yeah, I think we talk about a lot. If you're an immediate reward kind of person, if you're like, I did this work, I want to see the reward of that. Like I want to see the impact of that immediately. You might get frustrated doing Casa work because sometimes it is small things. Sometimes it is, you know, finally, we've been trying to get Johnny new glasses for 7 months now. And oh my gosh, he finally got them today and he looks great. Yay, we have to celebrate those little successes that happen each step of the way. And eventually, hopefully, they're all going to add up to something really, really great. But you don't see that. It's a slow burn. You don't see that generally right away. We have moments of like, wow, that CASA really made an impact. But I do think a lot of conversations I have with my CASA is, am I making a difference here? Am I doing a thing? And us walking through, this wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for you. Yeah. This conversation wouldn't have started if it hadn't been for you. You're the one that brought this issue to light and made this change for this child. Nobody was paying attention to this until you brought it up. So, like Arden's saying, it can be difficult to see immediately, but over time, it definitely builds up to something great. So right now we are accepting applications for our fall class. Our deadline is right around the corner. So our deadline is Monday, August 16th. That is next Monday by 9 a.m. The reason why we have that deadline is because our orientation is August 25th. And so we need time to get your interview completed and get the process started to get you onboarded as a Casa volunteer. So we have made the very tough decision. Our plan was to have this training in person. we've made the very tough decision that training will need to be virtual. We could not guarantee a safe learning environment with all the changes of numbers and people coming back into Athens, and there's just too many variables that we couldn't control to guarantee safety. So we've gone ahead and switched training to virtual this fall. Orientation will be virtual for those who have been accepted into training on August 25th. Our first day of training is September 9th. That is our first in-person meeting. However, Moodle will open September 1st, and your first week of Moodle is due before that September 9th date. So it's just, we're right around the corner. Here are the dates for the in-person meeting. You don't have to write this down right now. I'm sending it out to those who have been accepted. But it's every Thursday. We offer a 10 to 1:30 slot and a 5:30 to 9 slot. You don't have to attend both, just attend one. But it is every Thursday for 6 weeks. It is going to be a little bit longer than we would like since it's virtual. We don't usually like spending that much time on Zoom, but it's how we're going to have to do it this round. All right, so if you're interested in becoming Casa Volunteer, you can go to our website at AthensOconeeCasa.org, download the application. You can submit your application to info@AthensOconeeCasa.org, and Arden or myself will reach out to you and schedule an interview. Before you submit that application, just a few things to consider. Oh, Arden put it in the chat too, I see. Just a few things to consider is, what will your life look like when you are doing Casa work? How would you fit it in? Where would you schedule this work? How would you handle this work emotionally? Really digging into, what would it be like to sit and talk to a child who was maybe severely physically abused by their mother? How would you handle details of that if that child were to talk to you about it? How would you handle details of that from a forensic interview or from court? How would that impact you emotionally? Because our biggest goal is, yes, to get children advocates, but also to create a healthy volunteer experience for you. And this work, there is a real thing called secondary trauma, and it can happen. So really putting thought into that. Also, what is your learning style? And so are you comfortable doing a virtual learning with us, or do you prefer in person? If you decide that you prefer in person, our sincere hope is that we will be able to hold an in-person Casa training, hopefully right around the corner. There's always the dream and of next spring, when we do Casa training again, that we're going to be able to do that in person. And you can always defer your training to that time. We're going to ask you these questions when we do our interview. The interview lasts about an hour. It's pretty intense. So just going ahead and start thinking about this stuff now and thinking about, what your answers to these questions would probably be helpful for you. And that's it.
That's the whole thing. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate y'all both sticking around. I know it may be hard when it's only 2 people on a thing, but I appreciate y'all hanging out. We're happy to answer questions if you guys have them. If not, again, thank you for coming. It was great getting to speak to y'all and share about this opportunity. I would hope that we hear from you.
Yes, and like I said, sometimes people come to these and they're like, oh, wow, that's a lot. Maybe not right now. Unfortunately, we're still going to be here. It is an unfortunate thing that we still have to be here because there will still be children in foster care, but we're still going to be here. This opportunity is always open. So if now is not the best time, come back and see us when it seems like a better time. And we just really appreciate y'all being here tonight.